welcome to the Petey Performance Podcast. We've been just having a yarn off air about our training experiences with people that are training for the army, selection or special forces. And it was quite an interesting conversation we were having. So we might as well start with that as well after I ask you, how are you getting on and how has the last week been? Because it seems like it's pretty hectic at the moment.
Yeah, I would certainly agree to that hectic comment. So I'm actually in a hotel room in Paris. So if it looks like I'm sat on a bed, I am. Because there's no desk in this room. So apologies for the backdrop. So yeah, we did. I did the UKSCA conference, and the most hectic part of it, like you want to talk about stress and pressure. Like it's not standing on stage in front of however many people it was, which incidentally I've never really done. And presenting at a big conference was always a life goal of mine. Was actually traveling over with my kid for 12 hours, straight into it the next day, presenting. The kid was sick on the Friday night, straight into presenting again the Saturday, flying back out Sunday morning at 7 a.m. So getting up at 4:30, and we didn't get home till like 8:30 p.m. because of cancelled flights. That stress and pressure traveling with a 2.5-year-old. So
did you find you were in a little bit of a flow when you got onto the stage? You were kind of winging it, even though you were obviously well prepared, but you were embracing the chaos essentially, because it was actually probably a reprieve from the stressors that were impacted on you for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it was like, right, thank God I've got on here now, I can take a breath. Now, the first time round, you never know how your message is going to sit. And my message is a little bit different to anything else that was there. So we didn't really know how many people were going to be there. We didn't know how it was going to go down. And I think the first one, yeah, of course I was nervous. I think it's a healthy thing to be nervous. But I went through it and I did everything I needed and wanted to do. The second day, I presented again. There was obviously a lot more people. I think that's probably possibly because it was a Saturday, there's a higher, a larger crowd. So yeah, and I certainly felt one of two, like it was definitely more, anyone who was there, it was definitely more of like an emotive conversation on the second day. So the content was the same, but the way in which I delivered it was a bit more. There's a bit more emotion to it about my backstory, and I opened up a bit more, and that was really well received. But I felt like I hit like elements of flow, but I don't know if that was just exhaustion. I was so done in. I was like, I can't remember anything about what just happened, and people are trying to talk to me after, and I was like, yeah, can we just talk and sit down here? So it was a really enjoyable experience there, and such. For me, it was brilliant to be able to get the platform to talk about practitioner wellbeing, practitioner wellness, and for UKSCA to give me the platform to do that through the lens of career periodization. So yeah.
So in a way, was day one a blessing, and you're probably grateful you had day one, because it was essentially kind of like a dress rehearsal or a matinee for the main event, which was the Saturday, where you obviously brought the house down by the sounds of things.
Well, I don't know about bringing the house down, but the feedback was positive. It was good. And there's certainly been a good buzz post. So I guess I just got to ride that wave and keep driving the message. But I was just delighted to be offered 2 days. And, just saying that's twice the opportunity to get the message out. That's twice that, potential people could see that, and the audience and the capture of that was double, really. So I'm just really grateful for that, really.
So in relation to the positive feedback you received afterwards, and you just said you were quite emotional. Well, it was quite an emotive talk, and you disclosed a lot of your personal experiences during the talk. Did you find afterwards that people were more than willing to disclose their personal experience and their own issues that they've had around their own well-being, due to the fact that you were so strong and brave to be so vulnerable with them in the talk? It really resonated with them, and they felt they could share with you afterwards.
I would say there's rarely a day that goes by that somebody doesn't get in touch and tell me that they're struggling with something. and that is a sports coach. I've had Premier League coaches. I've had some international coaches from different sports from all around the world get in touch and they're grateful for somebody standing up to try and do this. There's not a day that goes by that it's not a sports coach, a performance practitioner of some sort, be that S&C, nutritionist, physio, even some sports psychs get in touch. And there's touch points every single day about all of this. And I was just grateful that people were willing to share their stories. I'm grateful for the platform I've been given to do that. But it's a mission I have. For me, it's my calling. I've always wanted to help people, but I've always built my own path and wanted to do things my way. And it's only through my experiences and my, the shit that happens to us and me as a practitioner that I've really stumbled across this. And it's very meaningful to me because of some of the things that I've experienced, which possibly will go into, but I don't want other people to experience those things. We can arm ourselves, and we do have the tools and resources to be able to deal with it. We just don't know what they are. And nobody's actually putting their hand up and saying, I've actually got something here that can support you with that. And I've got a community with 670 coaches in it that is thriving. And I've got these things here, which is a support network. We just need to be aware of it, open our eyes and take off our, I'm rough and tough, this will never happen to me kind of attitude and mantra. But people are opening up to me personally, often asking for it to be confidential, but everyone's always, the more I can tell my story, the more people are going to tell their story as well, and the more common it's going to become. No different to the health and well-being, mental health side of things with athletes. The more people open up, the better it is.
The reason I ask is, right there, it sounds like it is your mission and you have a great deal of passion about helping coaches in this regard. But I would imagine that there's a great deal of responsibility with that. Now, you might welcome that responsibility. By the sounds of it, you definitely do. But you have this support network around you that are looking to you as the leader, I suppose, of that support network. So what I was interested to ask you is, does that ever become a little bit overwhelming? And if it does, are you willing to reach out to that very same support network and disclose how you're feeling about things?
2022 has been the hardest year of my life, and we're 10 months in, and I will at some point before the end of the year, because we're not big into those new year, new me, like let's all talk about my year at the end of it kind of guy. I'll be writing that up soon. And it's been the hardest year of my life because, and again, I've never mentioned this on a podcast, so now this is a little bit of vulnerability for the crowd. I have a 2.5-year-old son, and I separated from his mum at a time when I couldn't handle that relationship anymore. It was too much. It was impossible, and I had no job. I'm in France. I have just got my residency card, so I was able then to get out and get somewhere to live. I didn't speak the language. I barely speak the language now, and I couldn't take it anymore. And I made the split, and that was my decision. It was the most difficult decision I've ever made in my life, but I'm not shy of a tough decision, as I'll probably explain later. And it's been an absolute roller coaster. And what I did was, I thought the only way that I can cope with what's going on is to be open and honest and vulnerable to the people that I talk to. So I actually created a really robust network around myself, and people were supporting me daily, weekly. Yeah, you just want to check in. How are you? I was doing collaborations and talks and business things with people, and that acted as how are things at home, and people were genuinely interested. The more people that I spoke to, the more I realized, you know what, this is really like how valuable it is to have somebody who is literally there and able and willing to support you. And it was only because I opened up that I created even stronger relationships and bonds with people. And it's only because I shared that other people thought, yeah, I can do that as well. Like, or I think if that guy can do it, look at him, he's a big, rough, tough S&C coach, and he's just finished working with the special forces. He's done this and that and the other. Why can't I? So I have a support network. I constantly open up, and if they say, how's everything at home, I'll say this and this and this is going on. And what are you struggling with? I'm struggling with this and this and this with my business, with life, with what else is going on. So that vulnerability is a permanent fixture for me now, because speaking is, for me, is what I need to do. Does it weigh heavy on me? No, I see it as an absolute honor. I see it as an honor to support anybody. Maybe just give them one little tip, trick, strategy, method, document, product that can help to change their path and their situation for themselves. That's the feedback that I'm getting. And for me, my response is thank you for opening up and telling me your story, because without that, you could still be suffering and in a pickle. And I believe, and I ask them to pay it forward as well. It's not because I'm a humanitarian, it's because I know the way in which our industry can chew us up and spit us out. I know that there's not that many people actually saying, do you know what, I'm here, I'm a person that's able to support you in that. And I'm able to show you through my own experiences and through my understanding of this field that there is a different pathway. So, yeah, I mean, that's a roundabout kind of way to say I'm always honored when people open up, and I'm always grateful. It always concerns me because it's just another person that's suffering the same things, another person that's burnt out, another person that's been shit canned, another person that's got a bully for a boss, another person who doesn't set healthy boundaries, another person whose well-being's in the gutter, another person who's really struggling to find any balance in their life, another person who hasn't defined their values, these sorts of things, and whose job is dictating their life and not the other way around. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword, but you know what, I thoroughly enjoy what I'm doing.
Fair play. I've great admiration for how vulnerable you've been straight off the bat there. And the two words that came to mind when you started speaking, well, firstly, you were incredibly brave, but then there were two words that we were talking about in relation to our athletes and in relation to strength and conditioning. And it sounded like you are a very robust and resilient person because of what you've gone through. And then it might be a little bit outside of the box question. And it's obviously, when things are going shit, they're going shit, and their shit hits the fan. It's chaotic and it's incredibly hard to deal with. But a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I was a little bit vulnerable on this podcast as well. And the feedback I got was just overwhelming, was the word that I would use. From people that were feeling similar way, from people that were saying they really admire what I did, from people saying that this is a must listen, and hopefully it would help a lot of people. And I had coffees with people and had conversations with them, and they disclosed things with me that I didn't know. And there was strength in unity there, I suppose, in that we were saying, like, look, you've been through this, I've been through this too. And you'll always pick up bits and pieces from different people. But what I feel like is, I feel like from disclosing that, and it was something I wanted to ask you as well, since I've disclosed that, I feel like I've accelerated my growth as a person tenfold, because I'm being far more open. And I wanted to ask you, is that something that you felt yourself in the last year?
Resounding yes. There's absolute strength in vulnerability. It's power. Like there's nothing more powerful or masculine, manly than opening up and saying I'm not all right, and I'm struggling. This is what I'm struggling with, and there's nothing more powerful, in my opinion. And it's so hard to do. We can see if we've got an injury on the outside, but we can't see if we've got an injury on the inside, and here or in here. And I set up the practitioner wellbeing movement, the mission, and what, especially in the early days, I was getting people on to come and talk, and they won't know this. I keep talking about this one presentation from. I have a small Facebook community, and in that community, I do what I call a digest, which is a 10 to 15 minute mini recording podcast. I just keep quiet. I don't want the Josh show. And they come and they bring something to the table relating to well-being. And he did this amazing presentation on self-compassion. And I was just there like, I have zero self-compassion. I've never had any self-compassion. This guy's just educated me in 10 minutes as to what it is. You need to tell me more. And then signposted me towards a bunch of different stuff. And it was that whole, I am where I am today. I am where my feet are. I'm not going to be here in a week, 6 months, 3 months. And just the only way that I really got through that patch, I was living in an Airbnb for 6 weeks. And the only way I got through, with no job, the only way I got through this patch was by saying to myself, I am where I am, and would be lucky if I was having a meal a day. And you know, that was a very tough time, and I was using what I was offering to people, not as advice from me, but as advice from subject matter experts. I was using that almost as my own catharsis, therapy, whatever you want to call it. And it's a hugely impactful. Nobody's got their, everyone thinks they got their shit together, but they haven't. Like, nobody's like mentally healthy or mentally unhealthy. It's on the spectrum. It's like you're fit and unfit. Like, what do you compare yourself to? Like a couch potato or a CrossFitter? Like, where are you? Like, somewhere in the middle. Are you mentally healthy or mentally unhealthy? No, we're all somewhere in the middle, and it's a slinky. It goes up and down, isn't it? So I'm no different to anybody else, and I lean on these subject matter experts and these people I collaborate with and my support network to give me the strength as well, the same way that opening up and that vulnerability that you've shown and is powerful, and you've given power to someone else, and you've given someone else the strength to be able to say, you know what, I'm not all right, and I'm going through that as well, because I guarantee no one is, someone's been through similar. I asked a question at the conference. I said, who in this room has been shit canned, that's sacked, fired, lost their job, been asked to reapply, been asked to take a pay cut, and strung along in negotiations, or burnt out or been on the pathway to burnout at some point? 80% of the hands went up in the room. If we extrapolate that across not just S&C, but everyone who was at that conference, that's about 500 odd people. 500 people, 500 coaches are going through similar things. People looked around and were like, holy shit, that's a lot of hands. And I said to the 20%, you don't want to put your hand up. So you need to build your exit strategy. You need to focus on your self-care, and you need to really truly understand what this industry is capable of doing if you allow it. So,
and how many of that additional percentage were in the position that both me and you were in previously, where they weren't yet comfortable to disclose that they had felt like that? So in reality, it's probably more than 500.
Yeah. And it's, I did have people coming up. I had a number of people coming up after, and then a number of people have reached out since. And there has been a wave of people saying, actually, do you know what? I'm not all right. Can we talk? Yeah, absolutely. Here's my details. Let's do this. And that's great. And I'm not a mental health specialist. I'm not a psychologist. I've got no skills and qualifications in that. What I am is a pair of ears who can help to support and guide people on how to navigate this very, very cutthroat and difficult field through things like career periodization, through things like effective networking, through things like good quality reflective practice, through understanding well-being through a different lens, through understanding self-care and a survival guide for, you know, the early starters. These are the types of things, and resources that I'm creating, understanding what burnout is, how to avoid it, how to manage it, how to recover. These are the tools and resources that I'm creating and what I have, and just different perspectives as well.
It's a very real scenario, and that makes it even realer that so many people have disclosed that they've been through it. And myself and yourself are disclosing here that we've been through it too. But an interesting aspect of burnout, before we move on to talk about the resources and how we can avoid it, an interesting aspect is, like, sometimes it's very hard to identify. I know myself, the couple of times I've experienced burnout, I have been in denial that I was burnt out, and I've been like, I'm just going to keep going. And it's only when somebody says to you, you're burnt out, I'm not, you are, like, that's only when you realize that, Jesus, maybe I am. And then you start addressing the symptoms that you're feeling, and then linking up and thinking, Jeannie, maybe I've been so focused on preventing my athletes from experiencing burnout, I've been burning the candle at both ends, and now I'm in this position, and I probably need to take a step back or rethink what I'm doing here, or restructure how I'm doing it, because what I'm doing here is not serving me. It's serving others, maybe, but I could probably be of better service to them if I was serving me a little bit better as well.
Yeah, it's bang on. It's normally I've always described burnout as a bang or a creep, and now one of the most important aspects of my life and that I try to support people on is understanding what the creep is, because the creep can lead to a bang, as it did for me, number of times actually. So what I have done is I've actually gone and sought out a subject matter expert, a guy called Dr. Petey, who is a senior lecturer in psychology at Sheffield Hallam University. And we started talking, and he started upskilling and educating me as to what it actually is and is not. And what's been really fascinating for me is to truly start to understand the types of factors which are relevant and consistent, and the symptoms that you can really clearly identify. And those include things like irritability, this approach to work harder and double down and double down and double down, difficulty doing the most mundane tasks. So maybe you're trying to pour water into a glass and you're spilling it all over the floor and thinking, what on earth is going on here? And you like shake your head and go bang bang, and then you do it again and like, yeah, I got it this time, nothing wrong with me actually. It happens over and over and over again, just these basic errors. And the other things relate to a lack of presence everywhere. That lack of presence, especially in home life, you begin to resent the work that you're doing because you can't get it out of your head. When you're at home, when you're away from work, you can't think of anything but work, so you're doubling down. Then that resentment starts to kick in, and our approach is just to do more and better, because of course we're invincible, of course it won't happen to us, of course burnout, nah, not for me. That it's like you're choosing between a Mars bar, like, I don't fancy any chocolate today. It's like, well, no, it's happening, it's actually going to happen. And you're not. It's the same as our athletes. Like, we don't program our athletes to lift a max every day, and we don't program for them to sprint to max every single day for an entire session, because eventually they will hit the wall. And I use that term, hit the wall, because that's exactly what happened to me. I fell asleep on the motorway, and I woke up on the side of the motorway with the car, with my foot on the accelerator revving and my other foot on the brake, and the car had come to a stop, not a scratch on the car, not a scratch on me, and I was woken up by the sound of cars going past, beeping their horns as they drove past. And the kicker to that story is that I wasn't even supposed to be on that motorway. No alcohol, no drugs, and also no idea of how I got there. Like, no clue. What could that have been? That could have been adios, Josh. Did I learn the lesson? Nah, because it wasn't burnout. I was just a bit tired, wasn't I? That situation happened because essentially, like so many other practitioners that I spoke to at the weekend, I was getting bullied in the workplace, which again, if you'd ever met me in person, you'd think, what, are you getting bullied? I'm not a small chap. And it does happen. You get these narcissistic bosses and they make your life a hell. They make your life absolutely hell. And they use their power and they crush you, and systematically they grind you down, so you just work harder and harder. I loved the industry, which I now know to be an absolute fallacy. And I was falling out of love with the industry. So my solution from this whole situation was to go and get another job in the evenings. So 4 nights a week, I was leaving the house before 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was getting back after 10 p.m. So hardly surprising, a great idea, Josh, hardly surprising I was going to wake up on the motorway at some point. At the end of that season, I was on a beach in the off season with the girl I was with at the time, and I was crying like a little baby. I was wailing like my toddler who doesn't get his dummy. And I was wailing, I don't want my life to be like this. This isn't my plan. This isn't what I've got for myself. And that's when I realized, you know what, I've actually got a real problem, like a real problem. And I don't want my life to be like this. So when I got back, I said to myself, I've got dreams, I've got aspirations, I've got things I want to do outside this sport, this field, sorry. So I started applying for jobs abroad. Within a week, I had 3 interviews. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 offers. And within 5 weeks, I was on a plane to India. I basically packed up shop and ran away. And that country gave me back my mojo. Those people there gave me back my mojo for life, for S&C, for the field, the industry. And that's 2 of the 3 incidences that have happened to me.
Again, like, amazing how you're so brave to be able to disclose that information. And I'm sure it's something that many people have been through, but that it's just what you called it is accurate. It's a wake-up call, and that's what it was. You woke up. The wake-up call was those cars whizzing by you, and it was like, look, there's something going on here, something's going wrong, and something needs to change, or something's got to give. And you made the decision for yourself, which is something that I think we're seeing happen more and more in the industry now, in that coaches are saying, you know what, this might be a great role, in quotation marks for our listeners that aren't watching, but this might not be the right role for me.
Yeah.
And the bullying as well, it's not a physical thing either. Like, bullying is not physical. It is about power. It's about power moves. It's about making decisions that you know is not going to be the best for the person that you're making the decisions for. You're not giving them any autonomy over what they're doing, or you're giving them the disguise that they have autonomy over their decisions when really they don't. And that's the really dangerous part, because that's how you fall into the trap of not realizing what's happening and not realize you're being bullied.
Yeah, these people have generally got a history of it. They're manipulative. They're often not very nice people, and it's incredibly common. They're dictators, and that's how they run things. And yeah, it's a rough experience. We don't get taught how to deal with these people. So that's the type of education that I'm putting together. How do you deal with a narcissistic boss? And I've got subject matter experts which are working on things to support practitioners in understanding, okay, that's that personality trait, that's the type. Yes, I want to get out, but before I can build my exit strategy, how do I deal with this person on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? Yeah, it's a rough old industry, but ultimately we choose to do this. Mm-hmm. And something that you said, which was interesting, is that what people can leave the industry because it's not for everybody. And I don't, there are a lot of good coaches leaving, and the fact that they're leaving like for a range of different reasons. But one of the ones that always it always sticks in my mind is, if these people are upskilled and educated with how to take a bit more control of their well-being, their wellness, and how to build a path for themselves that was a little bit more in line with what they wanted from their life, then would they be leaving? And the second thing is, a lot of people leave because they define themselves by the job. They are so, their identity is so wrapped up in the winning, the losing, the job, that when they get fired and then it happens again, and then their team is relegated, and they're so wrapped up in this fake bubble, chasing a pig's bladder around the pitch, or hitting the ball as far as we can. Right? When you think about it, it's ridiculous. Driving around in circles is what I do now, mostly turning left. And you think about it like that, it's like, oh, I love my job. Don't love your job. Don't be so bloody stupid. Love your family, love your children, love your parents, love the people that are going to give it back to you, not the people that are going to shit can you. That don't love your job. That's ridiculous. That's something that should be serving your life. Enjoy your job. Be enthusiastic, be passionate, be happy, be satisfied, fulfilled. Don't love it, because at some point it's got to bite you in the ass. And I don't know a single person, I don't know a single coach with over 10 years in the game who hasn't been shit canned or burnt out at least once. And 80% of the crowd at the weekend that happened to. Oh, we love this job. Be careful where you place your four most valuable assets: your time, your money, your energy, and your love.
Absolutely, because that's how we end up spent. Another word for burnout, obviously. But I think that is probably why we're seeing more and more coaches take the stand and say, do you know what? Maybe working for these people that don't have my best interest at heart is probably not for me. And maybe I'll just go it alone and go into private. And maybe it's going to be extremely difficult short term, but the long-term payoff of having the ability to decide what work I do, who I work with, why I do it, and how much of it I do is probably well worth putting in that short-term effort to get there in the long term. And when you initially make that stance and say, do you know what, I'm doing it myself, people typically kind of look at you like, are you mad? Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, there's such instability there. Like, how are you comfortable doing that? And the truth is, when you do it, you're not comfortable doing it initially. And it doesn't get much easier, but you pick up tools along the way that make it a little bit easier for you, or make it easier on yourself is probably a better way of putting it. Because I was actually in my old university today giving a talk about this very thing as well. And a lot of the questions that were coming at me from these young budding undergraduate students was, how do I set boundaries? How did you come to identify what your values were? How do you decide what clients you work with and what clients you don't? How do you deal with a coach who is not easy to deal with, or an athlete who is not easy to deal with? How do you define how much you charge? It's all things, everything they were asking me were things that they're not being taught in their degree. Because
for undergrads, though, to be fair.
Yeah, huge, but they're important ones as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that is a large part of the work that I'm doing. I'm actively pursuing and seeking out universities, because people talk about this industry is going to change from three levels. It's going to change from the future is going to change from the future being the next guys coming in. It's going to change with the people who are in right now, and it's going to change at the top. And that's a sandwich system. It's exactly what I did with the special forces in Romania. It's like playing 3D chess, and everybody needs to be spoken to and organized in a slightly different fashion. These guys down at the bottom, you need to plant the seeds, and you need to show them and guide them the best practice. These guys in the middle, us, who it's certainly happened to, we're easy. We're already on board. We're the easy ones. The ones at the top are the most difficult. But if you can get some of those biggest names on board, that's the people who create the cultures and the environments in which we work. That's the people that really make the decisions as to whether you have good well-being or not. You can take care and ownership of your own well-being, but at the end of the day, if there's a toxic culture in the club, you've only really got one choice or two choices: change that culture or build your exit strategy and get out. Save yourself, because it's not going to change unless they are open to that. The issue that we have with the top-down approach is that because there's no kind of single entity, not like the military, there's no single entity that really represents everybody, all the clubs, all the institutes, and the whole system. It has to be done on an individual basis. So you might get 3 out of the Premiership clubs on board with what you're talking about and really putting in robust wellness programs and packages for their resource, which are resourced, which are time efficient, which are sensible and achievable and sustainable, you might get that from 5, but you're not going to get it from the other however many clubs there are. So it's never going to be everybody, but every single person that is influenced positively, be it at that higher level, has the potential to influence multiple people. So that's why that systematic approach has to be attacked from high up. Wholesale, institutional, and cultural change is what I term it.
So then what are the necessary steps to achieve that wholesale change? We've kind of spoken there about what we need to do on a collective level, but from people on a personal level, when they're experiencing this, is it to go and set about your exit strategy as well as talking to people? Or is it something a little bit more complex that we need to do as a group of strength and conditioning coaches, or as an industry of strength and conditioning coaches that are sick of it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't be saying strength and conditioning coaches as well, because it's sports coaches and performance coaches and coaching in general.
Yeah, it's everybody. And we think we've got it bad. Think about the sports coaches. They can't go to their boss and say, my well-being's in the gutter, can you help me out? Because they're the head coach of bloody Arsenal or something. They can't do that. Think about those guys. They're even worse than us. The statistics in Premier League football are absolutely insane. By the start of the season, there's something crazy like 8 coaches will have been sacked by Christmas. I think it's in the top 2 leagues, actually. 8 of the coaches will have been sacked by Christmas. That's crazy. So you've got that hanging over your head. But what can we do about it? Or what should we be doing about it? Well, the easiest ship to turn is your own. But that doesn't mean it's always the right one. So ultimately, we as individuals need to be zooming in and really focusing on ourselves and our own well-being. We need to stop putting other people's well-being before our own, especially our athletes, because we need to realize and understand that actually we're not offering optimal service to anybody. If we're not high performing ourselves, and we can't be high performing if we're not looking after our self-care. It's a bit like our athletes not sleeping and then still expecting to be able to perform. Why are we any different to them? We're not really. We're not offering high performance to other people. So firstly, we need to focus on ourselves. Secondly, everybody always needs to have an exit strategy. Always. Regardless of where you are, you need to have an exit strategy which is robust, consists of a really solid network, a really clear understanding of the things that you do and do not want to do, that you have access and options to. And you are always aware of relationships, communication, and you are always thinking about what your next move is and what your next stepping stone is. So that exit strategy is paramount. Self-care is paramount for the individuals. From, I guess, we go up a notch. And
just before you move on that as well, Josh, something that I was talking to the undergraduates today about was in relation to their next steps. And I think it is in line with what you're saying about exit strategies there. And I think what's important for people to note as well is, in your next steps and your exit strategy, you don't have to have one and only and one true, this is the only way I'm going to get out of this situation, or this is the only way that I'm going to move forward. You can have multiple ideas of where you're going, because realistically, the path that you go down is probably not going to be the exact same as any one of those. So it's useful to have a number of different options, and you're only going to get that through networking and conversing with other people and forging and building relationships.
Well, that's career periodization that you just described. So that's probably what we'll go on to at some point.
We'll go on to it now, so let's go.
But the next step up is I'll just quickly round off the well-being side of things. You've got the individual. The easiest ship to turn is your own, but that doesn't make it the right one. You can influence the environment. You just have to be strategic about how you do it, and you have to be smart. You have to be able to show people that it's valuable, and you have to do it in the right way. Otherwise, it's going to get slammed down. From a manager's perspective, anybody who is managing anybody, from an intern through to a team that's listening to this, tomorrow or today, depending on what time you're listening, ask every single member in your team what well-being means to them, because it means something different to Doris as it does to Norwich. It means something completely different. To me, it's happiness, health, and wealth. Health is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, fashion cup of tea. And wealth is an abundance of knowledge, an abundance of positive relationships, an abundance of great experiences, and enough money to be able to spend with the people that you love and the time to do that. So that's wealth, an abundance of time, abundance of freedom. That's wealth. So that's my definition of well-being, and everyone's is slightly different. But if, again, I was to ask that question in a room, everybody will come up with something different. The next question that comes out of everybody, that manager's mouth, should be, and how can I support you with that? And how can I support you in improving your well-being or ensuring it stays on the straight and narrow? As an example, there might be a coach who's got 2 kids and he just wants to be home for dinner. He just wants twice a week. He just wants to see his kids at dinner time, because by the time he gets home from work, his kids are asleep. By the time he leaves in the morning, he misses the whole lot. He just wants to be able to give breakfast to his kids twice a week and dinner twice a week, and then he will be the happiest man in the world. You might have another guy who's just breaking into the industry who said, you know what, it'd be really, really beneficial if you could help me to map out my pathway, my plan. Because at the moment, I feel like I'm just CPD, and I don't really understand what I'm supposed to be doing next. So a plan, like helping me periodize my plan, would be great. Okay, that's doable, that's achievable, it costs nothing. It's just caring enough to implement something. But there is an element of ensuring that there's enough time, enough resource, and enough allocation. There's also a large element of what are the most, and Elizabeth Ola, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but she said, when I asked what can organizations be doing, she was on Twitter, she said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here in case she's listening, and it was something along the lines of understanding what your staff members are doing, and then ensuring that the work is not pointless, ensuring that it's not dead work. Like, we are horrendous in this industry at creating work for ourselves. We're awful. Yeah. But if a manager comes to you and says, right, there's 3 things that are non-negotiables in this role. After that, do whatever the hell you want, if you think it's going to add value. But if you don't, those are the 3 main things you need to do. It might be GPS data, it might be the S&C sessions themselves, and it might be the training load monitoring. And I don't want anything else from you. So do not give me anything else. Do not stay here past. Des Ryan's a brilliant example of this. He's like, do not stay here past 6 o'clock. Do not enter this building before this time. Your set hours are this time. Go home, get out. Literally booting people out the door, running a really tight ship, and creating time and opportunities for people to build CPD plans for themselves, to work on other things within the job that might not necessarily be related to the club. I'm not sure that he did that. He might not like me paraphrasing if that's not what he did, but those are examples of what you can do. But then we take it a step up from that. We go to the organization and the management, and we say, what's the culture that's built here at this whole place? Not just from the head coach, but what's the actual culture that files all the way down, that is represented from me all the way down? Do I know what every person does here? Do I know that the physios get in at 6 in the morning, that they leave at 7 at night? Do I know that? Do I know what they do on a day-to-day? Do I know how busy everybody is? Do I know what their hourly rate is based off the amount of hours that they're doing? Because I wouldn't be scrimping and not signing off an extra 500 quid a year if I'm looking and going, bloody hell, like, they're here at 6 and they're still here at 6. Okay. We need to start looking at these sorts of things and having conversations about it. But one of the biggest problems with that is the higher ups aren't in our pool, are they? There's not many CEOs and managing directors that are following S&C coaches and the practitioner wellness guy. It's they're not really doing that. So it's a big challenge, and it will be that middle level, our level, heads of performance directors, that sort of thing, that will take things up and drive it that way. So yeah,
That's what I was about to say. They're probably not following the S&C coaches, but they're definitely following the head of performance. In fact, they're probably mates with them in a lot of instances. And they have a very direct working relationship with them. And in some incredible cases, those performance staff can end up being in a director role very, very quickly. And it happens probably in rugby more so than in other sports, but it does happen in football from time to time. And probably in more minority sports, it happens more frequently because the numbers in those sports are a little bit lower. So they have limited pickings of people that actually understand how that sport works and how that sporting industry and culture works, I suppose. So my question then is, in understanding that then, and understanding what the barriers are to achieving change and what the necessary steps are, is that why you came up with career periodization? Was that your goal of trying to help that lower tier coach as well as the middle tier coach in how they can try to improve their own probably capabilities of taking control of their own lives?
In a word, no. It's just something that is logical now. It fits in. You can periodize your well-being the same way that you can periodize your career on a meso, micro, and macro level, and your self-care by things like holiday might be a macro nudge. That's a big nudge, but we can't go on holiday every week. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Probably would get old pretty quickly. So
it would, and then it would no longer be a nudge.
Be a holiday.
We would need a holiday from the holidays.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you've got your meso level, which might be, having a day off per week or 2 days off. It might be the dedicated family time. It might be home for every evening. Then you've got your micro, which would be things like breathing exercises, journaling, things that are easy to do, that are free, generally often free to do, that you can do anywhere. And these are types of things that you can take on board and focusing on consistently. But it's the career periodization. It stems from 15 years ago when I started out. I took out a piece of paper and I drew a line across the middle of that page. On one side, I wrote down professional goals, some broad professional goals I wanted to achieve. And on the other side, I wrote down 3 companies I wanted to work for. 3 companies I wanted to work for: English Institute of Sport, Exos, and Hintsa. 2 years ago, almost to this day, I managed to tick all 3 of them off. So I was like, oh, wow, okay, great. Well done, me. What next? Of course, what next? Yeah. And then on the professional goals were, I wanted to publish something. I wanted to manage a team. I wanted to work abroad. I wanted to present a major conference.
Congrats.
And there's another one, but I've forgotten what it was.
You completed it, mate. Did you?
I did. I have. But I set broad and open goals. I didn't set. I did have a thought in my head at one point, though. I didn't set specific goals. Having said that, let's get back to that line across the middle of the page. So I recognized where I roughly wanted to go, and those things were like bumpers at the bowling alley. It would steer me both my education and my CPD and my decision making. Is this going to support me in achieving those things over there and working for those people there? Yes or no? If the answer was yes, I was going to do it. If the answer was no, I wasn't going to do it. That line across the middle of the page, get back to that. I knew those companies, I knew those roles. At that particular time, when I first got into the industry, I was about 26. I was trying to make it as a semi-pro rugby player, but I had hands like cow's tits, so I can't catch a pass very well, so I was never going to make it. Fit as a flea, but I was never going to make it. So I decided to put all those hours into coaching. And what I ended up doing was mapping out. I was like, right, okay, if that's where I want to be, if I have these goals of these companies and these organizations, these types of jobs, what do they actually look like? So I went and printed off all these job specs, and this was like pretty much day one. I printed up all these job specs, and I must have printed out about 20, and I had some for like heads of S&C for rugby clubs. I had others for performance directors and managers for these different clubs and organizations and a couple of international things. And I was like, okay, let's go through all of these essential and desirables with a red pen and a green pen. And let's see what I have and don't have. And then I would map all of those out in a list. I had this tiny little green list and this massive red list that was like 2 pages long. And then I started putting those down into more specific categories, which at the time were all competency based. So they were all like my change of direction knowledge, my endurance, my conditioning knowledge, my strength and power knowledge, blah, blah, blah. That's how I started to periodize. And then what I did was look at what pieces of paper I needed in order to be able to at least be able to get through the door or into the right pile. I realized, okay, I probably need my UKSCA, I need a master's, right? So by this time point, I started putting time points on. I want to have my UKSCA, I want to have my master's. I'm going to try and be smart because I've got so much to learn. Every piece of reading that I do is going to be methodical, and I'm going to try and ensure I actually learn it by writing a brief summary on it and keeping a brief summary of that. Then I am going to use the master's assignments to upskill myself on one area, which I'm shocking in. So I was absolutely howling at conditioning at that point. So I made sure that 2 or 3 of my assignments were...
Which is pretty funny given that that was what you had as a rugby player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I was just like Mr. More and Better, of course.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening was things started to get, the green list started to grow and the red list started to reduce. I had this idea in my head that I love rugby. And at that particular point, I was just finished playing. So, I want to work in rugby. Okay. All I had fixated in my mind, blinkers on, was S&C coach, South Coast of France, Toulon. That was it. And I set this deadline. I was like, right, 5 years, that's it. I'm head of S&C at Toulon. There's no 2 ways about it. Well, I did get into rugby within 4 years of in the industry via the EIS. And after 2 or 3 years in rugby, that was enough rugby for me. So I did end up getting to France, but not in rugby and not quite to Toulon, but maybe they'll call me soon.
Well, it's a different setup now than what it was back when you wrote that out as well.
Sure.
So maybe you would want to be there now, but back then it was the glamorous Galacticos.
Yeah, exactly. But when I step back and look at it now, what me and Dan Howes did is I then put I put together. I'd done all of this on a spreadsheet as well, and I'd mapped out this big 4-year plan. In this 4-year plan, I'd had all these different colors. I loved the spready back then. I can't stand them now, but I loved the spready.
I've never liked them and I never will.
Really? I had all these goals and I had all these different actions, and I literally did it to the letter. And it's in the manual that we've put out for people. It's my plan. It was my agile plan, my agile periodization. I say agile because it changes, it morphs. You don't know what's going to happen next year, let alone you need to stay open-minded to opportunities. You need to stay open-minded to what your wants and needs and desires are going to be as a person and as a coach, what your speciality, what interests you along the way. So that was the kind of birth of agile periodization. And what we did was really narrow it down and say, well, okay, we've got these planners. The planners are great, they're useful, and you've used them, you've acid tested them, you've now tested them with multiple other people as well, like tens of people. And we need to add a little bit more meat to this. So you talk about these different stages of your career, a breaker, survivor, thriver, and redefiner. Let's buff that up a bit. Let's help people identify where they are. Okay. But then what do you do about it when you know where you are? So someone gives you a map, you need to first, they say, right, I want you to get to Tipperary. And they're going to go, okay, where am I? So that's where you need to identify what stage you're at. Then you say, right, well, how am I going to get there? Well, you need to know what resources you have to do that. So you need to understand your gaps. And that's where the core competency framework of career periodization comes in. That looks at the core competencies of the industry. That's like industry skills and knowledge, networking, communication, employment and experience. Like, these are the things that are fundamental and like almost pretty much non-negotiable. From there, where are your gaps based on your stage? So in our core competency framework, we break it down to breaker, survivor, thriver, and redefiner, 2 early stage and 2 late stage within the career field. And we say, for each of those core competencies, here are the types of things that you need to be able to do. And you need to be able to exhibit these with evidence. So you then take that on another step and you say, you've now created an awareness of your gaps. You've also created an awareness of the next steps and the exact skills that you're going to need in the next steps. You can become more intentional, more deliberate, and more strategic about mapping out your CPD, so that those 3 vital assets we spoke about at the start, I spoke about 4, but let's break that down to 3. Your time, your money, and your energy are totally and utterly dedicated in the correct way whilst you're working on your professional development. So you bring it all back around and you punch it into the big 4-year planner. The 4-year planner, like I say, is based on goals and then specific things that you want to be able to do. Exactly as we do with our athletes, we reverse engineer it. We get down to 1 year. We then map that out. That's the macro. We then take our meso, which is 1 year, broken down into quarters, which then become our micros. And we take our actions, attach goals to it, or goals, and then attach actions. So, for example, gain experience at a gymnastics club. Attend training 2 times per week at the local gymnastics club. Write down a log of everything I've learned. And that's a direct action that you can tick yourself against. You can hold yourself accountable and actually create, you could objectify. So that it's been so impactful and effective for people that, you know, we've had some amazing feedback, some really great feedback from it. It's very comprehensive.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I would imagine uptake is quite high, given that it is essentially how coaches like to think. It's very well planned out, it's very actionable, and it's very measurable as well, and specific as well, because it's giving you what you need and when. Even though you can have a large degree of individualization in there as well, you can chop and choose what you want to do when and what you want to achieve. So what you get out of it is what you put into it. It also gives you a large degree of autonomy because you select those things.
And you're dead right. The agile career periodization aspect is bespoke. Your career is bespoke to you. It's not the same for everybody. So on the planners, we have examples for, because it can be a daunting task to map out your plan. I don't know what I want to do in 4 years.
Exactly.
But you need to know some things that you definitely do not want. I do not want to earn peanuts. I do not want to work insane hours. I do not want to not be able to provide for my family. I do not want to have to pick my family up and move to the other end of the country for $2,000 pay rise. I do not want to work evenings and weekends for the rest of my days. Like those, I don't want those things. But what do I want? Well, I do want to work abroad. I do want to get into something research, do some research at some point and collaborate on that. I do want to manage a multidisciplinary team. I do want to earn 6 figures, of course, don't we all? And I do want to create something for myself and from my own, for myself. So
and you don't need to know the end
that's
straight away as well.
Yeah, exactly it. That's your barriers, that's your bumpers at the bowling alley that directs your career, your professional decision making. And career periodization has allowed people and facilitated people to be very intentional about how they spend their resources. In addition to that, it has been really impactful. Myself and Dan have got this phrase, I don't know who came up with it, but you don't want the first time that you know you have a gap in your skills and knowledge to be when you're in an interview.
Yeah.
You do not, because I've been there, trust me, it's like, you choke. And you've got no choice but to either fumble to some ridiculous answer, which is probably going to get you kicked out of the room, or and called out, or you have to turn around and say, I'm sorry, I don't know, or it's lost me, I've got a blank.
Yeah, but I think the right option to do if you do come into that scenario, and I know there'll be a lot of budding coaches listening to this, I think the correct answer is to say that you don't know. And
100%.
then,
but that doesn't happen, does it?
No, it doesn't, because we're trying to protect ourselves and we're not comfortable saying that at that stage of our career, because we think that after we've graduated, I should know everything now. because I did it in college. We've done it all. We know it all. But then what you go through that period where I know everything to 2 years in the industry, you're like, oh my God, I know nothing.
We know everything and we're invincible. You're dead right that we should be saying, yes, I'm sorry, I don't know that. But that's the whole point of career periodization. You can plug your gaps. So, based on the job specs, based on how to read a job description properly, that you are likely to be asked questions. It's ridiculous. I don't know how why so many people fuck up job interviews, because everyone that's signposted is waving this huge flag at you. We're going to ask you questions on this specific piece of paper here. There's only really about 10 or 15 different options on here. Learn all this and you're going to be good. Let us know how you've executed this in your work. Let us know you understand it, and let us know how you're going to solve our problems, because these things here are related to our problems. So you come in here and tell us how you're going to solve our problems, and you're going to get a job. Simple as that. But we don't prep like that because nobody teaches us how to prep like that. And that's a lot of the work that Dan does, how to genuinely read and pull out. He can pretty much create questions that he's now at the stage where he could create questions for people based on job spec. And that's how it should.
That's experience as well. That's what comes with experience and comes with knowledge. So the blueprint, is that part of the journal and the journal part of the blueprint, or what are the two services or products that you have available for people, and where can they find out more?
So Career Blueprint is the company, and under that umbrella, like I said, skills, tools and resources to help practitioners to take control of their pathway and their well-being, and create a life which is full of positive experiences and these sorts of things. So the products, there's a career decision-making model that I put together with John Noonan, called the Triple F Family Fulfillment and Finance Model. There is the Career Periodization Framework Manual for S&C coaches, which myself and Dan put together. At some point, there will be a short course coming with that from that as well. There is also my Reflective Practitioner's Journal, which is that kind of daily, weekly, monthly reminder to keep your well-being kind of at the forefront, and also a really effective reflective practice tool, which I stole from the Special Forces guys. And there is also a Burnout short course coming, which is with the good doctor himself, who I mentioned earlier, and another couple of bits and pieces around effective networking and dealing with a narcissistic boss, well, how to look after yourself, how to survive the first few years in the industry, how to move from surviving to thriving. All of these are available on my website, which is www.yourcareer-blueprint.com.
And I will put the link to that in the show notes for anybody that's interested. And I just realized we haven't spoken about Special Forces training whatsoever. So I'll have to invite you back on for another chat and a conversation around training in season 3. But thanks a million for coming on. We are going to move on, Josh, to quickfire questions before we finish, if that's okay. And the first one is proudest achievement to date.
Publishing something, and the Reflective Practitioner's Journal, something solely for myself. The Career Periodization Framework was something I've been sitting on for 15 years and finally had the nuts to launch it. I've got another journal which I'm sitting on right now, which is done and ready and published, but I don't know if I've quite got the minerals to actually launch it yet.
Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe the right time will come eventually.
Yeah, something will happen with that at the right time, like you say. So yeah, I think from a professional perspective, they're my proudest achievements.
Favorite athlete of all time?
Johnny Wilkinson.
Every week. And he's fine as well. It's gas. I completely and wholeheartedly agree, but people are going to think that we're all the exact same because it's what we all say every week. It's the most frequently named by a country mile. I knew you were going to say that as well because of the Toulon.
Yeah, I just couldn't. I just can't. I tell you what, like he only really gained that out of this world legendary status when he moved to Toulon, and that speech he gave in French and English.
Oh yeah,
you got people like Backy's Bolter just like just clinging on to every word, and legit, like, I go into Lyon Rugby, I watch them play a lot, I know the head coach, and so I see him delivering in French and English, and I'm like, holy shit, that's incredible.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
When the final was on in Dublin a number of years ago, me and my best mate, we are huge Johnny Wilkinson fans, and we just knew what his pre-match routine was. So we were queuing up at the gate before they were letting people in, and we had to negotiate with the guy at the gate to let us go in early. And we got in, and we were the first two people in the stadium, and he was already out there with the kick and coach practicing. And it's just like, you can see why I think and you think the way that we do, and why all of strength and conditioning coaches and Johnny Wilkinson fans have been molded into that kind of mindset in a way, because that's what we learned when we were growing up as well. Yeah. And whether it's positive or negative is probably not the question. It's probably what aspects of it are positive and can be used when necessary, and what aspects of it can probably be forgotten about in certain scenarios when you should forget about them.
He's very open about that now. He's very open about all of that, which is fantastic. He's a real ambassador for, a healthy approach to loving your, to applying your trade. So yeah, he's just a legend, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. What's the biggest thing you've learned in the last 12 months?
Two things really. Number one would be self-compassion and how to genuinely implement self-care on a regular and consistent basis. And the second thing is that what I'm doing with regards to career blueprint is needed. There's a huge issue within our field, and that, yes, it is a little bit like pushing a massive boulder up a slippery slope in the rain wearing bowling shoes at times, but I feel like it's gathering pace, and bit by bit I'm maybe getting a couple studs on those shoes. So the more people I can talk to, the better. The more traction, the more shares, the more likes, all of this helps, and it genuinely I feel is making a difference for the field. So yeah,
100%. What would you tell your 18-year-old self? Last question.
Just chill a bit and enjoy the ride a little bit more. It's get a mentor and have an eye on the long game, but just try and engage a little bit more with what you're actually doing. And I would really try and upskill and educate on presence, because that's something that I've never really wrapped my head around until the last sort of 12, 18 months, 2 years since I've had a kid, really, presence and the importance of that to other people. So yeah.
Thanks a million, Josh. Something in that for everyone. Really, really profound points and really great insights into what we need to do as coaches to put our best foot forward and look after ourselves. And I think a very powerful message that hopefully will resonate with a lot of people. Thank you.
I really appreciate the platform and enjoyable conversation as well. For me, it's practitioner wellbeing is massively represented, sorry, and there's a huge need and want for this. It's just, hopefully we can all start to really open up and embrace some of the things that get put out there now. 100%. And as I said, I'll put all the links in the show notes. So if you want to contact Josh, or you want any more information around any of his products or services that are available to you, and they are available to you, just click. But thanks again for coming on, Josh, and we'll chat to you in season 3 by the sound of it. My pleasure. Thank you.